Where'd you go, Open Broadcaster? Ah, there you are. G'day Marway. Yes, congratulations. You are the first to arrive. Okay. Put our unnecessary bits and pieces over here. Put our necessary gloves on. Let's see. Right, that'll fit nicely. Reminds me, best I turn off the autofocus for now. That's good. Might just try to turn this in a little bit more. No, that's no good. That'll suffice. Hey, Plan B. Hair stuck in my ear there. Alright. Okay, we're already at 11:30 at night, so I guess I better get going on this phone, because it's going to take a little bit of time perhaps. As you probably saw from the title, it's another 665. It's been dropped, but fortunately it must have dropped while it was off, because the hard drive is okay, but it's got hinge damage and the USB port on here isn't working properly. I've got power coming out of it, but I've got no data. Alright. So we just do the usual set of things, get the hard drive out, because we don't want to have an accident, considering it's already survived one. It also needs a bit of a software cleanup, but I'll do that after everything's done. A little quiet tonight. Anybody? Am I a bit early for the majority of the states, I imagine? Alright, we're doing alright. Oh, we've got a missing screw, and we've got another missing screw. So we've got two missing screws right where the hinges are. Oh, I wonder if we're lucky and it's not actually a broken hinge. I wonder if it's just a case of because the screw's not there, it's free rotating. That'd be nice. Hey Amy. I didn't think we'd be doing any power supplies tonight, Amy. Just possibly boring laptop hinges and USB ports. I know a lot of people think this laptop's pretty old, but it is an i5, so it's worth bringing up and getting working again. Besides, I like these ones. I like the C665s. What is wrong with that screw? There's something dreadfully wrong. That feels like the captive nut has come out. You don't normally get them failing up on the front edge like that. Everybody enjoying the start of their Sunday? Lazy Sundays? Whoa, that's broken clean out. God, this is possibly going to be a little bit more of a mess in one way than I expected. Oh well. Just glad that hard drive didn't die. Hey Mike. Oh yeah, there goes that hinge. Where the hell's my spudger? Actually, yeah, where is my spudger? G'day Rosin. Oh, I'll just have to do it using this spudger. There we go. As you can tell, I do generally work on these Toshibas, which is why I can just tear them down pretty quick. I think Toshiba must have been the only brand that was selling in this town for quite a while. You still have to double check though, every now and then some of them will have a screw in the top plate, others won't. So try and, oops, don't get enough feel on that glove. There we go. Don't really need to take you off, do need to take you out. I'd really love to know where my metal spudger went. I can't see it on my other workbench. I'm sure I used it last night. Okay. This is one of those nice ones where the power switch is just a 2-pin switch into the main board. Nice and easy. Okay. Wish mine was going to be lazy. Graduation parties, 3 hours of driving. Ooh. I have to rely on Siri for chat. That's interesting. This one's going to be a little difficult to pull up because of that captive nut I was talking about before. It's kind of got a grip on things, and I feel like I've got still 1 or 2 screws hiding. They're being reluctant. Yeah, this one up here is kind of hoping I can. No, I can just feel it grinding. Come on. Story time. So I got a call yesterday saying I dropped my phone in water. Oh no, I did the whole rice thing and I can't get any service. So I take the phone apart, pop out the SIM and the S card. What is going on here? Oh, look at that. Yeah, there's a big chunk of the chassis dropping right out. Yep, there's another one. They've all... Come on. Yeah, managed to get that one. It was partially grinding away. Come on. There we go. Where is that other one? Yeah. And yeah, you may not be able to see it, but that's just chewed clean out of its post, as opposed to say like that one, which is actually still has a blind nut in it. Let's get back to Amy's story. So I put the SIM card back in and it works, and they tell me, oh, dropped it in oh no, oh that's terrible, Amy. Oh, that's disgusting. Why do people not tell us these things, really? Oh. Hello, I'm pretty sure it's Michael with the Chinese writing. Hey ITM2. Oh, Amy, that's disgusting. You should be able to immediately penalise people once they've done that. More bits of chassis coming clean. Okay, we've pulled clean out, but it's a very clean pull out. There's no fracturing of the posts for this, so it looks like it was more slapped out. I don't mean literally slapped out, but just the effect, it came straight up rather than crushing it to the side. Now the other problem we've got is that this USB port apparently doesn't seem to work, and I'm not exactly sure why yet. I think I know why. That little cable there, that just sort of really easily came out. Let us see. And it's easily come out because it's under too much tension here. It needs to be, this adhesive strip needs to come back by about another millimeter or so. And I'd say perhaps what's happened is the vibration just over time has caused it to pull its way out of the socket. I mean, I'm not guaranteeing that is actually what is wrong, but it was easy to come out, easier than it should have been. So let us test and find out. I'll be really happy if that's the case. Whoops, sorry guys. And where the hell's my brick? Ah, there it is. This machine, cannot speak. This machine came in initially because it wouldn't power up properly. It was being intermittent, and that was quickly determined to be the fault of the universal laptop power brick. Any of you who know those universal ones where they've got changeable tips on them, and what happens is they tend to fracture on the inside, and the cord inside the receptacle tends to fail, and that is what had happened, and that happened on two of them. As soon as I plugged in a more respectable pack, what do you know, it worked. Alright, the way we are going to test this is we're going to put my Ubuntu boot stick into here, the right way up. I don't know if any of you know, but there are actually three orientations for a USB stick. There is the first time, and it doesn't work, and then you turn it over, try it again, it still doesn't work, and then you finally put it in the third orientation, which is the other way up again, and it does work. You can laugh, but most people will realize that that is the truth. That is what happens. Alright, let's see if we can go. If it boots from the USB, oh no, it's working. Come on, there you go. Come on, boot. There we go. It's booting from the USB now. Come on, don't make me look like an idiot. Come on. There you go. Perfect. Alright, so the fault there was simply that this sort of cable that went over the top of where the hard drive bay is, it was just set in too tight at the factory, and with the combination of the drop or whatever happened, must have just changed things around enough, and it pulled it out of that socket by perhaps half a millimeter, and that was enough to cause it to no longer work. It's nice when you get a fault like that instead of the crap that I've been handed lately. Alright, that's good. Stick that back down. Let's see. Voltage to smoke. I had fixed an iPhone 5 water damage last night. It seems like water damage phones fixing is just sort of like standard daily stuff, isn't it? Do you guys fix them for reuse or just fix them to get data off? Let's see. Leslie, I take it you're talking about the 3-position USB stick? Because yeah, it catches me out so many times. Okay, that's working. Beautiful. Exit. Come on. Yeah, data only, thank goodness. I know when I was first starting out and fixing iPhone 4s, things like that, for water damage 4Ss, I was trying to fix them to put them back into production, but I, like pretty much probably everybody else, found is that after a couple of months they usually always came back with some other issue. So in the end, yeah, it's like, well, the only realistic thing to do is save for data only, and that's it. Now the question really comes up though, I know Jason of SDS had a run-in with this recently, where a lot of the time when you fix it up, it's like 1 or 2 small problems away from being a fully functioning phone again, and the customer will often try to coerce you into doing a full fix, and they won't accept no for an answer. I mean, obviously you ultimately give them no anyway. So the question of ethics is, should you pull something like a VCC main fuse or something like that just to finalize the fact that it will not work again unless someone knows what they're doing? Hey Ray, no, there is no big day coming up. That particular day will vanish from the calendar, thank you very much. If I so much as get a single phone call, I will rage. For me, the perfect day that doesn't exist is one that goes like any other day, unless someone drops a great big wad of money in my pocket, and then I'm okay with that. But then, other than a thank you, that's all they're getting. Ever since I was about 13 or 14, I never appreciated what you were talking about. Hey Panov. G'day Kevin Klinkmiller. Alright, okay. Well, we've pretty much solved everything in that case. We just got to now JB weld this thing. Unlike the other night, I'm going to preset the hinge so that I don't... Actually, did I show that previous one on video where I set it up but then I forgot to move the screen forward slightly? I think I did. That was the one with the... I was using the 7 amp hour 12 volt lead acid bricks. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did do that one on stream. So how's things over on your side of the world anyway, Ray? I don't really talk to you much anymore. I mean, yeah, just it's the way things go, isn't it? Take this CMOS battery out because it's probably due for a replacement anyway. Let's see. There's enough flex in there, I think, that I can safely drop the JV weld in and just push it back down. It's kind of sad. In this case, I would almost be tempted to use super glue and an accelerant, like the basic bicarb. Because nothing's broken there, and it'll be a fairly tight fit, you don't need a lot of space filling glue like an epoxy. You can just use a bonding glue like super glue with a slow or a thick super glue, and then you hit it with an accelerant and it basically just forms a hard plastic. But I probably will go JV weld on this, and I will flow it over the top of the hinge anyway. just in case I'm missing some sort of fractures that have developed. This one here, I will probably also JB Weld. It also could be a thick super glue fix, but yeah, we'll JB it. First fiver rollout happening before the end of the month. Is that to your place or one of your? I take it one of your customers. Oh gee, someone wants me on the phone. Let's have a look. I've got something swearing at me. Why are you swearing at me? Hmm. Oh, it's a note to myself. Oh, I'm swearing at the fact that there's a public holiday tomorrow. Right. Although it's not actually in this state, it's in another state. But it means then that my courier deliveries are delayed by a day. G'day, ZX84001 ZTV. You realise, of course, I'm not going to say that again in this stream. I'm just going to call you ZX. Alright, let's get the... Oh man, good thing this laptop's clean inside. I'm going to go get the scales, the drug scales, and the JB Weld, and we're going to do some Breaking Bad mixing up. Was it asking for money? No. ZX, the Spectrum chip number. Okay, I mean I know the ZX81, ZX80 Spectrums. Certainly, I had one of the clones of that sort of thing myself, but I wasn't sure about the rest of the numbers. So I was like, yeah, I didn't want to make too many assumptions. I should have asked ages ago. Come on, there we go. I found one of my favourite trays. These are the preferred trays because they have the middle recess here, so it's perfect for doing the job. I never get to tell what the supplier is going to send me in terms of iPhones, so it's luck of the draw. The reason why I keep this JB Weld tubes separated, even though they're sealable and everything, is they've got a bad habit, I find, of just managing to find each other in a bag and just their vapor alone can seem to start curing things. Okay, what have we got there? You're gonna make up your mind, you're 18. Alright, so we're gonna have 36 still up. RAM multiplexer. Okay, I didn't know that one. Yeah, my way. I used to do a lot of JB Weld stuff, and sometimes they would work. really well, and other times it'd be a bit dodgy, and I kind of got sick of that. So I realised I had precision scales in the shed, and thought, well, that's a good use for them. Something's really blocking up this. This really needs some assistance in extraction. What? You're telling me 40 now? Okay. I think maybe it's time I bought myself a new pair of scales. Because that is now telling me I'm up at 40, which means I'm 4 grains excess on the steel portion. That's fine. We'll just clear that off. Of course, I'm not exactly sure what 4 grains worth would be. Let's have a look. Seems like there we go, that's good. Sorry, my nose is a little itchy tonight. I think my cat, one of them, Mia, the ginger one you guys saw the other night, I think she's just going through a bit of a phase or something and giving me a slight little bit of a hay fever effect. Okay, you're off. Nice thing is at least these scales are dirt cheap. Like if you go on somewhere like AliExpress or dx.com, you can get them for like $4 or $5. Okay, this is going to make my webcam on the laptop shake around a bit. I'm sorry. The other thing that does affect epoxy blending, mixing, curing a fair bit is the weather. I know when we were used to mix up epoxy for the fiberglassing of high-end pylon races, the hot weather and humid weather of our region would mean that if we use the proper proportions, it would leave us with a weak mix, and you wouldn't notice it until you're flying, and as you hook around turn number 2, which is the tightest turn, your wings would just instantly go and clap in that bit, and then the fuselage of the plane would just go straight off into the middle of nowhere, up somewhere up in the sky, and then after the wings are clapped, they'd just like flutter down to the earth. Yeah, it was never much fun when that happened. I mean, it was great as a spectator, dreadful as the pilot and owner, because you'd be like, God damn it. The stuff wasn't cheap either, as with almost all racing. Yeah, it was fun. Because these days everybody's got their quads and things like that. It's a lot easier to fly. A lot easier to fly. Sorry, hinges, you're never getting unscrewed again. It's part of the deal. Kevin, yeah, the problem with the bench supply that I'm using is that I couldn't find an Amazon link per se, but I'll give you the number anyway. It's a Tenma, that's TEN, like number 10, MA, 72-10505. Alright, where's that other thing I need to epoxy in? Oh, that's way too much epoxy for this little sucker. I don't think I will... maybe I should try. I've got this blind nut here that needs to be sorted out one way or another. Okay, I'm assuming you're in a reasonable position there. Ah, crud. Yeah, ZX, I'm going to blame the scales on that one only because for some reason sometimes they seem to get electronically stuck. And they'll sit at, say, well in this case they sat at 32, 32, 32, 32, and then I took away everything and waited for it to stabilize, and then boom, it was up to 40. So yeah, I'm blaming the scales. I know, don't blame, yeah, worker, blame, whatever tools. Alright, so that laptop, yuck. God knows where I'll put that on the rest of it. With this power supply, Kevin, it there's a new version which has recessed banana plugs on it. Like this portion here, they're all recessed, so it's more like a multimeter where you have to use the call it sheathed sockets. Well, you don't have to use the sheath sockets, but it at least lets you do that. Alright, okay, so we've got this one here which needs me to put the captive nut back into it, which means I'm going to probably make a colossal mess of it, but that's cool. That's fine. Was there a stream this morning by either Lewis or Jess or Chris? Because my email said there was nothing on, and I thought that was pretty unusual. Normally there's always something on. I think I'm going to have to put the I'm going to have to put the actual screw into this one. If I don't put the screw in, what will happen is the JB Weld rides up into the shaft. Sorry, not the shaft. Into the screw hole, I guess. And then that is a bit of a pain to drill out afterwards. Because when you drill it out, you then have to try and recut gain access to the thread again. And if you're really not sure about the screw, leaving it in there, just put a drop of Vaseline or something like that on it, and they'll stop it. If you're worried, they'll stop it getting caught up by the epoxy. I've never generally had any problems. Occasionally there might be a little bit of a grab initially, but if it's properly cured, you should be able to just tighten it a smidgen of a turn, and that should break it clear, and when you back out, it'll be fine. Okay, I don't really know why I'm bothering this one on the top deck. It's not that critical. Alright, it's been quiet this weekend. Okay, well, glad to know it's not just me. Because normally when I wake up in the morning, I see at least 3 or 4 different emails from YouTube saying so-and-so's got a stream, so-and-so's got a stream, and then I have to decide who I'm going to watch and who I'm not going to watch. Or sometimes I get a little crazy and try to watch 2 at once, which pretty much never works. You might make an L-shaped wooden frame to hold the glued lappies in place. Yeah, I've often considered doing a jig, like making a jig, rather than doing a dance. What? But I find if I do this screen bend down, it works pretty well. It's not as secure, and certainly if I bump it, I'll be in trouble. What am I doing? Can't clean that up properly. You can go in the bin. And my nose itches again. Alright. Guess we'll... That should be fine. I'll just rest this on top. There. All the screws. I'm fine. Oh well. Well, that's a bit of a problem. I've fixed what I had to fix. That was a little too quick and easy. We can all blame that USB port. It just was too easy. I shouldn't curse. It'd be nice to have a change. A quick and easy one. Although last night's desktop machine was a bit of a laugh. Alright. Okay, that's good. Ah, I can't think of anything else that I've got today. It was a bit quiet. There was only 2 jobs. That was one of them. I've spent the rest of the time doing circuit board schematics and design layouts. So if you like, I can have a look at those and show you the one I'm doing for the iPhone battery and whatnot. Crap. Sorry. Excuse my language then. No. Great. I should probably really use rsync for what I'm about to do, but I'm too lazy. Kickback and chat. I don't know. That sounds a bit like I'm cheating there. I'll bring up this Apple thing anyway because I have been meaning to show everybody. Hey, Johnny Lation. How do you stay motivated? Right now, Johnny, the primary thing is I'm effectively broke. Okay, not really broke, but every day is a rush to stop the wolf from eating me. So for now, that's what kicks me out of bed. But it's going to be a problem when that is no longer my motivation. And it is, funnily enough, something that I have found causes me troubles in the past. Someone quite a few years ago, when I was working for contracting for another group, made some analogy to it being like being an eagle, where you got to you can't afford to not have enough because of eating or motivation, or you'll starve, or money actually, you starve. And if you have too much, then you become gluttonous and you don't do anything. So you've got to have it just right, so you can still fly around and continue on with your daily stuff. My eagle has now, funnily enough, eagle, right, yeah. Let's bring up this Come on, come on, come on, come on. Then, yep, that's fine. Test equipment, USB current meter. What? Sorry guys, I'm just shaking my head at what I'm trying to load something up and it doesn't seem like what I'm expecting. Weird. Yeah, Leslie, I know Lewis does it with his sit back and chat. Although it kind of helps when he's got, well, however many, couple of hundred people floating around. I'll be right back. I'm just going to try double check my file name and I'll be back. Sorry about that. I, as usual, went along and checked that the little fur kids were okay. And fortunately this time they were all happily asleep on their own respective beds, whichever they'd decide to choose for tonight. Alright. Oh, ZX, oh, picked up a nice druggy scales. Awesome. Almost as good as Amy's pea water phone. Yeah. Alright, let's now switch over to desktop and webcam. No, desktop, that one, that's it. I'll get used to this one too. Alright. I'm going to force you poor people onto your own chat. So the other night you were watching me stuff around trying to create this iPhone battery tester device, and so far this is what I've got, and that is not the best way to view it. I'm sure that probably looks really weird for you guys. I do not have my key combos. Black, okay. Yeah, still not much better. Oh well. Yeah, we all make mistakes. Yeah, that would have been a nasty one. Oh well. Anyway, so this is what the board is now. I've noticed that unfortunately I've made myself have to pay more for a board here because the 50 by 50 limitation in terms of millimeter size is around about here. And I've got this slightly extra area, so I'm going to have to buy it as a 10 by 10 board. G'day hi 217, but it's given up watching live streams. Shame. Not good. And for the design ideas, what I've got, I've decided I'm going to power it directly off a 12 volt supply, which will be coming in here, just a normal DC jack. And anyone who has done anything with computers will more than likely have a bunch of these 12 volt 1 amp type jacks, power bricks. So they'll come in there, and then I've got to regulate off a 5 volt supply, and the 5 volt supply drives the Atmel AVR as well as the LCD panel, and it drives this is the charger chip for the LiPo, for the battery. There'll be a daughter board which will connect onto here through a flex or something like that. And you've all seen the boards where you can plug in the iPhone batteries, so it'll be something like that, perhaps a little more compact. Now, the previous time that I was going over this, I mentioned I didn't want to have to use a fancy current regulator, current sense chip. Unfortunately, in the end, I relented and I decided to use this Coulomb counter, which I've used in the past. It's a nifty little chip. It'll actually just, instead of you having to constantly poll the chip to find out, sort of making all the samples, it's a integrating amplifier chip, and so therefore when the amount of power or current has flown through, it will then, a certain amount, it will then send out a pulse, and so all you have to do is count the pulses, and it increments the way you want. And conversely, when you're discharging, it still puts out the pulses, but it sets the polarity flag, and so you know that it's actually discharging. So it's a little bit of an expensive chip, but it makes life really easy. And then of course we've got this here is all the discharging resistors. It just spreads out the heat as much as possible. You've got the usual indicator LEDs, because why not? Now for the communications, I was originally thinking of plugging it into the PC, and after checking on the specs and things like that a bit more, I found it's just not really going to work. So for communications, let's see if we can flip this over. This is going to be a bit of a disaster, I'm sorry. I don't have my key bindings here. Top names, top stop. Come on, what else is there? Top document. I'll do. Alright, on the bottom, this is where a few of you may recognize this layout. This is a Bluetooth serial module, and that will just sit on there. The LCD will sit over the top. There's enough room between the LCD and this module. and you can just bind that to either your phone or a PC with Bluetooth on it. And then we'll have 3 buttons here just to do whatever. So you need a processor. Oh, hello, Paul. Came back from an emergency at 2 a.m. Was that emergency with yourself or someone in your family? I hope not. Either way, I trust that, well, since you're here, things can't be too. I mean, since you're here, you must at least be alive. G'day, Stray77. Yeah, so this is the HC05 I think I'm going to go for, because it will be slave or master, although this should probably only just run in slave, I think, I'm not sure. That just makes it easy. It resolves any possible ground loop issues, which is the big thing I was worried about if I plug into the USB port. The buttons won't necessarily be required because I'm thinking it'll be more of a software driven type thing, but they're there for the option. And we've got our little mounting posts, of course. So I really need to bring my keyboard bindings over here because I can't switch back and forth my layers how I want. Anyway, so I'm going to send that off probably tomorrow or the day after. I've got 3 other boards I want to send along. So after about nearly a year of not doing any electronics designing like this, I'm all of a sudden doing a whole lot of it. I wish they could have told what was wrong at KISS. They rule out my kidneys that has failed me in the past. Well, that's not good. Hey, you really need those kidneys. So do we ask about your prognosis, Paul? Or we don't know yet? Okay. Those of you who know about those Bluetooth modules will realize that the Bluetooth module itself is actually quite a comprehensive microcontroller, and I could probably replace the AVR with whatever's on that Bluetooth module, but I'm suspecting that it'll be a whole lot of retooling, a whole lot of new stuff for me to learn. Not that I'm against learning stuff, but sometimes you kind of just, some things are a little bit over the top, like relearning an entire microcontroller system just for one project simply isn't worth it at the moment, and you don't know when they're going to change anything in that particular Bluetooth module. So this way at least it keeps it isolated, it gives me opportunities or alternative options if something changes. So why you want to turn it into a big stick? Remove the ground plane under the antenna. Stray77. I think it's a muscle thing. They gave me Valium as a relaxer. Okay. Stray77. So what, under the pads there I need to remove the ground flood? Is that what you're saying? The flood fill? Would that be on both sides of this board? Because when I was reading through the spec sheets on those modules, they didn't make any mention of it, so I'll certainly prevent the flood from going under there. I'll be honest, and I thought the antenna was more perhaps on the perimeter or the outside, not actually on the underside of the board. ZX, it's not really any worse than, well, it's actually simpler than the ZX81 in the first place. I mean, geez, that thing had 1 billion discrete components in it. Okay, not really, but you know what I mean. One thing to point, this is a crystal run processor. Normally I don't bother with using crystal control, particularly, yeah, I mean the AVRs, once you calibrate them, they're within about 5-10%, which is good enough for most situations. But I thought maybe the Bluetooth module might get a little bit sensitive about that sort of thing. So yeah, used up 2 pins and went for the crystal. Although it's a resonator, same thing really. Or cut a hole. Yeah, I don't think I'll be cutting a hole in that. I think I'll just kill the flood fill under that. This isn't my... What the... Alright, someone really wants my attention. This is not my active working file. Let's see. What's going on here? Alright, that's fine. Alright. Let's see. Yeah, well, like I said, yeah, I'll cut that plane out. That's not going to be a problem at all. It's on the end with no pads. Just don't want to ground right under it. I'm assuming it's a PCB. Well, I've seen the modules when they're opened up, and yes, you can see the PCB track for the antenna in there. So, but thanks for pointing that out, because otherwise I would have sent those off for production, and it'll be the more expensive one too because of the larger size, which unfortunately is required, I think, in this case, because this is a template that I've done for using LCD modules, so that'll be why it's a bit bigger, which is a bit of a shame. Have you made a breadboard version for testing? Nope. I used to do... Well, realistically, I never did much in the way of breadboard testing, those white plastic things. For one, I hate using pin-through parts, because when you pull them out, they stab you in the finger, particularly the chips. And the other, I find that there's so many parameters that can't be controlled on the breadboard properly, that by the time I finish stuffing around with that, particularly these days, it's easy for me to just spend the $9 or whatever it is to get the boards produced, wait 2 weeks for it to turn up, and often what I'll do is my first prototype, I'll put a lot of spare test points, pin headers, just possible ways of rewiring it, so at least then I can get ready for my second prototype. So yeah, in short, no, I don't use breadboards really for testing anymore. So, okay, what else was I gonna do? I wouldn't say I'm spot on with my designs, but like I said, if you put in pads and connections for other possible options, like you put in 2 different connector pad layouts, or you put in different part pads and just some random spare tie points for different signal lines, you can usually sort out the worst of it on the first prototype and then come back to the second prototype okay. Yeah, the breadboard connections usually have about a 50 picofarad capacitance for each row, and that really messes with things. Like if you're trying to use a scope on that to try and find out what's going on with your signal lines, and you look at something that looks more like a sinusoid waveform rather than a square waveform, it's usually because of the fact those rails are imposing their capacitance on it too much. Okay, this is one I just finished doing today. It's something completely different. Let's just ignore. Okay, this is a little for solar panels. If you want to track the charging and voltage going into a battery, a lot of you, if you're on Ada, Lady Ada site, will recognize that this chip is the, where is it? The Texas Instruments INA 219, It's a handy little chip because it talks I2C and it does your current sensing, and it's on high side, and you can have up to, I think it's 25 volts or 26 volts on your input rails there, which is very convenient. It's cheap, it's like $1.90. It will also report the voltage, very handy. And if you program it, it will compute the power and all that sort of stuff internally, so it makes it easy to interface with at times. In this particular application, I'm only going to be just reading out the voltage and the current and let the software do whatever it wants to do for logging. Room to bodge about. Yes, that would be the correct term there. Man says, I'm making a microphone cable tester that pulls a line low and looks for what goes low on the other end. Breadboard capacitance slowed it down a bit, but the cable does that too. I'm assuming they'd be coaxial. No, they're not coaxial, they're just braided multi-core. Is that for XLR microphones or just something else? My way, I will not say that horrific thing that you just wrote on there. I refuse to believe that is what it stands for. As I said the other night, 1 squared still gives you 1, but 1 times 2 gives you 2, so it's I2C. Yeah, so I'll be sending this board off probably tomorrow as well to get spun up. So I'm only going to need 10 of them. Shielded twisted pair. Right, thank you. This will probably be plugging into a Raspberry Pi or something like that. That will be on site wherever these solar installations are. It's surprising you can get away with putting 20 amps through this, and that's only a 2512 size resistor, but it'll be about 2 milliohms. So I'm only dropping maybe 4 watts at the worst at 20 amps, but these panels are only going to be producing about 10 to 15 amps at the worst. So and I've got a few bodge resistors here, as ZX was referring to. With this particular chip, you can program it to have about 16 different I2C IDs. I've only bodged it so I can have 4 different ones, but that's why there's so many resistors here. Most of them will just not be used. It's just a case of pick which one you want, and that's because I don't know what the client is going to be, well, what other I2C devices they're going to have on their bus. So, g'day Chris Long. Yeah, this afternoon the person threw the specs at me, and I was like, oh, okay. So, interestingly, it ended up being quite similar to the Adafruit one. I didn't realise, but surprisingly similar. It's just kind of a lot of these things, the way the chips are laid out, set up, they lend themselves to coming out to the same design at the end of the day, or very similar. Mine has a built-in voltage regulator because I don't know what for sure the client is going to be connecting it to. If they said to me I'm definitely going to have a 3V 3 line or a 5V line, then I could bring that in rather than having the regulator here. But anyway, so it's easy enough just to tap off the battery, and this regulator is fine for anything up to 16 volts input. So, Chris, I'll show you the battery. I don't know if you saw it. Okay, fine. So I'm bringing up the battery iPhone tester thingy. Okay. So we're pretty much ready to go. I've just got to, thanks to the advice here, someone else has experienced it, I've just got to stop the flood fill in this area, and then I can send it off to get processed, and in about 2-3 weeks I'll get one back and I'll have a shot at building it and see how it goes. Chris Wong. Let's see. Well, it seems like Demonstrate. No, right. Looks like we might be in for an early one. It's 12:30 here, and I supposedly have work in the morning, but you all know that's a lie. Yeah, Chris, except it's not USB. It's just going to be powered by 12 volt, 1 amp or 1.5 amp plug pack, and it will communicate to the PC through Bluetooth, just through serial. It will have an LCD panel on it, most likely, but it'll be easy enough for me to produce it without the LCD panel. It's just an option type thing. We'll see how we go. I've got the options there to try different things. I will use it and see what comes up. I would love to be able to source the iPhone connectors a little more reliably, so that instead perhaps of the LCD panel being up there and all, I was going to point on the screen, instead of the LCD panel being up here and all the control lines, I could just fill it up with the battery connectors instead and see how it goes. Hey Lynn, 7:30 a.m. That's unholy time to be awake. Chris Long, are you making the software? Yes, I'll be making the software for it. UK Rules, hello. Let's see. Stray sent me a picture. I don't know where that's gone. Maybe I should go open a new window. No, come on, come on. It's not giving me an option. Okay, let's see if I can find this. Where the hell am I? Oh, it looks like I seem to have inadvertently closed something. Oh dear. What's happened? I seem to have accidentally broken my browser. Standby, technical difficulties. Yikes. Okay. Just starting up another browser. And we are back. Sorry, I got my chat, and that's all that matters. Okay, let me catch up on what I missed out on. Right, yeah, here we go. Why opt out of USB, or are you aiming this to work with mobile devices and Bluetooth? Chris, the main reason opting out of USB is that if I use USB, I've got to find a way to get enough power through to it so I can charge batteries effectively. If you just plug USB, like electronics device, and try to draw power from the ports, on most computers you can get away with it, and they just let you have half amp by default, even though technically you're only supposed to have 100 milliamps. And then if you negotiate with the system, they will then, in theory, that's when you should get your 500. Now, if I plug in an external device, external power, 12-volt plug pack, that then puts me at a risk of a ground loop situation. So I prefer not to do that. I mean, it shouldn't happen, but it shouldn't happen seems to happen a little too often in life. So in this case, it just ends up being easier. Even if, I mean, these devices are used by quite a lot of people now in developing. The Bluetooth module is just a where's my water? I can't find it. Oh well. The Bluetooth module is just a serial port bridge, basically. So it makes it easy. I don't really have it intended for using with mobile devices. It's merely just a lazy way out of getting the data to a machine while not putting any risk of ground loops. One case subs logo is mighty fine, Paul. Well, Chris, you got to be getting close. Like I said to everyone last night, if you're not already subscribed to Chris, it'd be really good if you could. Even if you don't watch him, no. He's this close to getting to 1,000, and 1,000 is a big milestone for all YouTubers. ZX, I'm still watching you on my 4 million old Laffy. Classic XP. Oh man. Rosen Georgiev, what window manager are you using? It's Fluxbox, which is essentially a minimalistic window manager. I've tried things like XFC and GNOME and Mate and Cinnamon and all those sort of things, and I just keep coming back to Fluxbox. So I like my minimalism on my desktop. So you have more control over everything. A little spyware block, blah blah blah. Use an old transformer supply. Yeah, no thanks. What's the turnaround time when you submit a circuit board? It depends on what you pay, but typically 2 weeks is about your best to happen. In theory, it could happen as little as 8 days, but more often than not, it's a 2-week wait. Frequently, it can go out to a 1-month wait. Stray, use a FTDI HCO5 dongle to connect via USB. Let's see. Do you mean instead of using the HCO5 that I'm going to be using now, or do you mean to create the PC side interface? Because as I understood it, we should be able to just use any Bluetooth receiver and a master in a PC and be able to bind to the one that I'm going to use. Is that correct? I believe it is. Does the Arduino IDE latest run on Fluxbox? I have no idea. I really don't. For all my AVR work and things like that, I just use Vim. Good old text editor. Vim and AVR Dude along with AVR GCC. I'm very much a Unix style text only type person, though I do like to see pictures and streaming and things like that, so I guess I have to use graphics at some point. But yeah, ZX, if I was using a transformer supply, it wouldn't be such a problem, but these modern switch mode power supplies, particularly the ultralight, ultra compact ones, do have a little bit too much connectivity, so to speak. 38 subs away. Gee, you're not far off, Chris. Tell you what, you've gotten to 1,000 about 4 times quicker than I did. Which means I'll be very eager to get that microscope soon. Chris, the payment should roll through next week. and that will just be into AdSense. Pardon me. And then AdSense should roll that through to my bank account, close to the end of the month. And then finally, once it's in the bank account, I will then go and purchase it from AmScope. Now I'm hoping that AmScope will accept my credit card because it is an Australian credit card. I saw somewhere the other day that someone was complaining that AmScope wouldn't accept foreign credit cards. Now I don't know whether they meant perhaps from somewhere a little more foreign as opposed to UK or Australia or New Zealand. So yeah, well, the funny thing is that it would actually work if you use a transformer because you have your full isolation there. G'day Austin. I'm used to my GUIs nowadays. Not keen on the command line now, so must be getting old. Oh come on Leslie, I'm old. I like my command line, and I love it that in Windows half the time when you're doing an administration job you end up in the command line with PowerShell anyway. If not, PayPal me and I'll order it and send it to you. Alright Chris, I will, I know I can actually trust you for that. Unless you're trying to steal your 200 back. No, seriously, I do trust you. So I would like to get to 1,000 subs. I am nowhere near. The only trouble is once you get to 1,000 subs, then all of a sudden 10,000 is your next target, and you get really irritable and twitchy about that. You're like, come on, why am I not at 10,000 already? And I imagine when you get to 10,000, you start looking at people like Lewis Rossman, and you sort of go, why is he at 250,000 already? It's like you're never happy. DOS is where I started with PCs. Yes, DOS is where I started as well. I think it was DOS 3.11 for me on an XT 8088, naturally with the turbo button, which you never took off. It was always 10 megahertz. How dare it come off 10 megahertz? I think the next upgrade I did with that machine was to put a 286 daughter board into it. So it was a 286 on a small circuit board, and you plugged it into where your 8088 sat. And then after that, actually the first upgrade I got was to get an IIT 8087 coprocessor, math coprocessor, because at the time I was doing third year university, and one of our projects was to do a computer graphics rendering system. And the 8088 at that time it took about 15 minutes to draw a teapot. It was all 3D, but it was still 15 minutes. And so I spent, I think it was like $150 to get this IIT 8087 coprocessor. Plugged that thing in and boom, yeah, it was like 5 seconds and it was done. It was brilliant. And then after that, that's when I got the 286 daughter board. And after that I upgraded to, I think I just jumped straight to a 486 at that point, something like a 486 25 megahertz. It was a DX because I knew I needed the coprocessor. Odd DOS there. Digital Research version 5. That was an odd version. Usually ran into compatibility issues with that. Not DRDOS. DRDOS was unfortunately screwed over by Microsoft. We all remember that. 4DOS, that was the one that was really good. That was when finally DOS users had a sane shell where you could have command histories and things like that. Which of course, after you get used to working in Bash or T-shell or something like that, and you've got all your history and auto-completes and things like that, and you go back to DOS, it's like a nightmare. But then 4DOS comes out and that saved us. And after that I jumped off to a Pentium 66 megahertz and ran OS2 on that. And I used the Presentation Manager graphic environment on that for a while, but in the end I went to a TextShell system, and just ran all my DOS stuff on it. So I wasn't really using OS2 for any OS2 binaries, it was just using it as a multitasking DOS system. Hey Bobby, yes, the repair is all done. What ended up happening was, I'll show you. I'll see if I can show you without disturbing the glue. I almost threw this down onto the floor without remembering that I have a glued in nut there. Put it over there. I'll put the screws over here. Let's see. Yeah, this hinge here at the back, Bobby, it just pulled out vertically, so I was lucky there was no actual damage to the webbing or the plastic. So I just poured it with JB Weld and squished it back down. Problem solved. And with the USB, what its fault was that there's an impact here, and when I plugged the USB in, I could see I was getting power, but I wasn't getting any data talk. So when I took the top off, I've noticed that this socket, which you can't really see from there, was pulled out by about 0.5 millimeter or so, and then when I pulled it all the way, it just came out way too easy. So what had happened was this adhesive cable strapping, it was pulled a little bit too tight. So when the impact occurred, it had pulled the strapping, and the only way I could give was to pull out of the socket a little bit. So all I did was lift up the strap, plug it in again, and it worked, so that was easy. Finally, nice easy one. We also had a knockout of a bit of the chassis here, the plastic where the screw comes up to meet him with the nut, and over here we had a captive nut pull out of the stud, which is what I just pushed over to the other desk there. So there you go. That was the quick 5-second version. Laptop hinge design seems to be very bad for consumer grade laptops. Yep, that's an understatement. There was the one I did the other night, and it had done it properly. They had a metal plate that everything gripped into, and so that was not going to be a big problem there. Let's see. My first real computer was an IBM 282 that I saved from a dumpster. It happened via as the business was throwing away. That was nice and convenient. My first PC was an 8068 processor or 8086 processor with DOS. Couldn't do stuff all on it. Yeah. At least you didn't get an IBM PC Junior. Those things were a nightmare. Every time I need JB Weld, it seems to change consistency, and eBay is the only place I can find it. Yeah. Lynn, when you say it changes consistency, do you mean out of the tubes or after you've mixed it, or when you've set it down and waiting for it to cure? I get mine from the hardware store, or I do order it in. I never get it from eBay. I don't know, maybe JB Weld on eBay is kind of like Amtech Flux on eBay. Maybe all you're getting is Vaseline. My second real computer was a Commodore Amiga 4000. Oh, yeah. They didn't sell too many of those, did they? The 4000s? Or was the 4000? I don't know. I don't know my Amiga history well enough. I'm sorry. I do apologize. It really makes me wish they'd marketed the... Oh, okay. If I'd read the second half of your sentence, or your second sentence, I would have answered my own question. We had some fun. Old MFM hard drives, controller board, low level... Well, yeah. G equals C805. Remember upgrading an old compact 386SX PC with one of those clip-over overdrive DX chips which piggybacked over the original surface mount CPU. Yeah, there was some really innovative stuff that they came out with. The 386 was a nice sort of compromise, but yeah, sort of it got you your 32-bit, but it was sort of like a half-baked 32-bit because I think it was the data bus was still 16-bit, but internally it was 32. So yeah, you got crippled by still not having a CoPro, and you had to double clock your bus lines just to get your data. The best ones are the ones that the hinge screws through the frame into the hinge, and the screen simply uses the screen for structural support. Yeah, they could definitely do a much better job of the engineering, but in the end, I guess it's sort of like they probably kind of subtly hope, oh well, if someone drops it and busts the hinge, they'll get a new one. Sometimes I'll just drill out the case bottom and run a long screw through if the customer doesn't care. Is that before or after you find out that they care? The old VIC 20s were amazing for their time. Yeah, I never got my hands on a VIC 20. The Commodore 64 I saw and did a fair bit with, but the mostly I seem to have ended up on the Z80 and then Intel 8088. So I guess you could say I sort of didn't fall into the Motorola band. Better than the TRS-80. I guess the big thing with the TRS-80 was that there was all the business stuff associated with it. You know, you could open up the catalog and you could have your printer and external drives and all your different options. I remember looking at the catalogs for those for many years as a kid and thinking, oh, one day I'll get one. Thankfully I never did, I suppose. Too fast for me to know. Oh, g'day Pedro. MacBook hinges seem to be well designed. Well, I think MacBooks in general for accessibility of service are vastly better than PCs. The downside, of course, is they're a bit of a pain when it comes to trying to service them beyond that. But realistically, they're still far better than trying to service PC laptops most of the time. Yeah, Amiga computers were amazing in their time. They really were. I remember the art department at my school had one, and they had this printer. It was a color printer. It was probably only about this big, and it had a ribbon cartridge in it. And it was like a wax. It like had wax 3-banded color ribbon in it, and so it would just deposit the colours and resulted in really pretty pictures. But gee, that must have cost a fortune to get new cartridges for it. And if you use up one colour, that's it. It's ruined. You can't use any more. The JV Dry, nope, certainly not. That's it right now is going through its more, I should say, least viscous stage where it just starts running everywhere. I don't know why it does that. Supposedly it's supposed to be loaded up with the tryptotropic. Oh, I can't even say it. Anyway, it's stuff that stops these sort of things from running. They put it in paint a lot, so your paint doesn't run down the wall when you do it. But something happens during the reaction, and it goes through a phase where the viscosity drops right off, and it just runs everywhere. It's not that stuff is designed to fail as such, it's just not designed not to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with you there. I don't believe that there's sort of like malicious intent as such. It's more a case of why would we bother to over-engineer this, particularly when we can do an over-engineered laptop and sell it as a tough book. It's all too complex now. I'll stick to electronics repair and recovering people's lappies. It is good when you recover people's data and give it to them. Although it's annoying when you say, yeah, I can recover your very valuable photos for you. It's going to cost this much. And they go, oh, that's too expensive. No thanks. And you're like, well, yep, they were really valuable. Spectrum Sinclair 48K. Oh man, those chiclet keyboards. To be fair, those keyboards were useful. Remember when they had multiple overloaded functions on them? And particularly the graphics character versions, that you could press, I don't know, mod 2 or something like that, and press the key and it would give you one of the 8 or 16 different combinations. Leslie Monroe, when I was at school, we learned on the Acorn BBC Micro. What an awful machine that was. I always dying with chip creep. Oh, easy way to fix those is you lift them up by about that much and you drop them on the desk, and the impact puts the chips back in. We had the same problem here with an Australian design machine called the Micro B, and it was crikey, I can't remember what processor I had in it. I can't remember. It was 68,000 or so, but it was a common problem. And so yeah, you'd have to pick up the machine, drop it from about 6 inches, and it'd be working again. Bobby Gordon, I always give my customers the option of replacing the case or long screw, and not if there's nothing left of the plastic standoffs. Yeah. Same DC jack, epoxy the jack in the case or a new case. I'd probably replace a fair few of these bathtubs if I could consistently get them quickly. Because particularly with like these Toshibas, it's so quick to swap out everything. And certainly quicker than me sitting here JB building stuff and then hoping that the customer isn't overly vigorous with it. Lewis streamed last on Friday night, sunburn and all, poor bastard. He redid his shopping again, sits next to Jason. Yes, actually I did see that, yes, thank you. Jessa hasn't streamed since the 8th. Yeah, they've been quiet. I guess they need holidays too. I remember the Atari 400 membrane keyboard. That was nasty. That really was. Yeah. In Australia, we had a machine called the Dick Smith Wizard, and it had two paddles, like joystick paddles, and you flip them over, and on the back was half a keyboard each. So you'd have to have both paddles in this whopping great big console, probably about that big, and you could expand it by plugging in extra modules on the side. And it had those Lexan type membrane. There wouldn't have been Lexan back then, and oh, they were horrible. You couldn't touch type on them, you had to punch type. In most cases I charge $25 for file recovery of the hard drive. Wow, Bobby, yeah, okay, that's cheap. I charge about $100 at least for that, because too many times I have done that easy job and people come back to me and go, oh, actually, can you do this for me as well, and all that, and it's like, I hate it when jobs keep coming back like that, and because you've already charged them, that's it, you can't really charge them anymore, at least not without causing dramas. So I just charge them $100 or so now outright. I think Lewis actually talked about that the other day. But I suppose it depends on your local market too. I mean, you can't, like he's in, say, LA, and you can't take what he charges and transpose it into, say, some country town in another country. It's all relative. But certainly I think you have to pad out your costs at least a little bit to compensate for the amount of times that you get screwed over. Chris has been stingy with streams lately. Yeah, I don't know what Chris is doing. I think maybe he's crying over the fact that everybody's not using his wick or something. Look, Chris, look. Oh, look at that. Look, it's your wick. At least I found a use for it here, and it is very good for what I use it for. Honest. But I think for oversized desoldering jobs and wicking jobs like on laptops, we need something a little more open weave to suck up more. But I do genuinely believe when I start fixing iPhones and whatnot, this will come in to be far more useful. What happened to Dick Smith? Did they all just close? Yeah, basically after Mr. Dick Smith himself sold it to Woolworths, which was back in the mid-80s. Woolworths ran it till about, I think, early 2000s, and they sold it off to someone. And then there was a whole lot of shonky sort of budget shifting, stock shifting, all sorts of weird stuff. Someone was pumping and dumping the what am I thinking? The company itself. So it all collapsed into a big heap, and then Kogan here in Australia, they bought Dick Smith as a online. They took basically all the customers that Dick Smith had online and absorbed them into Kogan, but they also kept the Dick Smith franchise branding and all that sort of thing, which I think was a good move because there's a lot of people. Dick Smith had a reputable name here, so to just carry on with that momentum was a smart move, and it's paid off. I think they definitely have picked up in sales. Oh, come on, Chris, don't hate me. Are you bored? Are you getting bored without yapping yet? No, not yet. Maybe in 2 minutes. Uh, I can stream me talking to Micah if you want. The only trouble with streaming with Micah in the room is that all those banging noises just keep catching me out. We used to sell Atari machines at Dick Smith. We didn't sell the Amigas, I don't think, but we definitely had the Atari, and it was pitched as a multimedia music machine. So, Chris, I'm not really trying to jab you too much on this. I mean, I've got 10 foot of this stuff. Believe me, I will use it. It just doesn't match with what I'm doing now, but I know it will become useful in a month or so. It's just waiting for the appropriate time. You can't force these relationships. You've got to find the right match. Yeah, see, exactly. I think it's going to work really good for iPhone repair because it's got that ultrafine weave, which means it's going to pick up all the residual solder from the BGAs and things like that. Whereas when you're on big kludgy laptop stuff, it's got too much finesse. This stuff, I need my goot to do the rough stuff. John's touchpad. I had a PC Junior. John, I sympathise for you. Those things were a nightmare. I really did not enjoy them at all. We had them at our school in an upstairs computer room, and the downstairs computer room had normal PC XT clones. Nobody went upstairs. The bottom room filled up, and then if it filled up, people would begrudgingly go upstairs. The juniors were not a popular item. If you don't give me shit, I think you didn't like me as a friend. Yeah, that's pretty much true. That's our relationship, isn't it? We give each other crap. Yeah, that sounds good to me. What else? Would you believe the BBC Micro used an ARM processor? Now I thought the way it went was that the BBC, the Acorn, was sort of like the birth chip that then turned into the ARM set. So they sort of the Acorn chip that was in there was the popular one, and they decided, all right, let's develop this further, and they forked off to their own company, I believe, and produced the ARMs from there. It's a marvelous creation, really, the ARM chipset. What about Chris? Oh, no, almost said that whole line. I'm not saying that. Uh, Micah makes noises just giving us ammunition. Oh, right, okay. Uh, and that upstairs PC Junior room has a bit of a annoying, painful memory for me because when I would finish my classwork, I was known in the school as being the weird computer kid, and the teachers knew that. And so if I was finished early, they'd say, well, you can go off to the computer room. So I did that, and then one day I was coming down the stairs, and this whopping great big kid from, I don't know, a year or two ahead of me, it must have been a year. He was a rugby player, and rugby union, not rugby league. Um, Private schools don't play rugby league. It's union or nothing. Yeah, I don't know what he saw in me or whatever, but he did not like me one bit, and he just sort of thumped me in the arm, bruised me good and proper, And that wasn't the worst bit. He just sort of then looked at me and he went wham, headbutted me, and I'm like, I just came walking down from the stairs, and so split open the eyebrow of my head and everything. And I'm off to hospital. I'm a little angry about that in some ways because really, that's the sort of thing that did happen a fair bit back then. Nothing really happened to the guy. He perhaps got a day or two off school, which in my opinion was always sort of like something I missed out on. I was like, damn it, I'd like to take a day or two off school. What's everybody hate about being expelled for? I don't understand it. But they brought him on pretty quick because he was an essential player for their rugby union team. So, that was an interesting life lesson. It pretty much said to me that, being right or whatever is not going to matter in most cases. You're going to get done over even if you shouldn't be. So look out for yourself. Sorry, I'm 50, but the brain is still 5. Yeah, I wish. Actually, the ARM Cortex 3 chips were and are fantastic for what they can do in such a small package. I mean, what an advancement, yes. Aussie Rules Football. I actually quite like Aussie Rules because it's a very free-flowing game, and they got a hell of a long way to run, and the guys are pretty damn athletic. I mean, I'm not, not into guys or anything myself personally, but I can see why it's popular. There's no stop-starting, or not generally anyway. And there's a lot of scoring going on. So it's very popular down south. Maybe not quite so much up here in the rural areas. We tend to be more of when I say we, I'm talking the general population, not myself personally, more of a rugby league type group. I don't know what it is about rugby league, but it seems to be what everyone loves. Maybe it's all the scrumming and the bashing and stuff like that. Yeah, it's basically gladiators with a ball. So, and we definitely do not see rugby union up here. God, if you get caught playing rugby union up here, you'd probably be hung, drawn, and quartered. Who's youngest in here? Certainly not me. No, definitely not me. Leslie, I'm not far off from you. Yeah. Fortunately, I'm pleased to say I mostly grew out of the whole getting things split, broken, cut, and all that by the time I got to university. My parents were certainly pleased to hear that. Which is interesting because I started riding motorbikes when I was 17, which is the earliest you can back then in Australia. I had a few falls on the motorbikes, but nothing serious. I was always fully geared up, like, gloves, leather jacket, boots, everything. And it's pretty tough to keep wearing that stuff when it's 40 degrees outside. Centigrade. G'day, Englishman. You need to watch the movie Traceroute, a movie about the nerd generation where he documents growing up during the revolution. Kind of funny for many of us. I'll have to have a look at that one. Maui, I'm 18. Oh my goodness. Okay. So it looks like there's a fair sweep of people in their 40s here. I'm glad to see. Makes me feel not quite so old. I got to ask a question. For the people who are in their 40s, did you find hitting your 30s to be harder than hitting your 40s? For me, falling out of my 20s and becoming 30 was extremely traumatic. It was like, that's it, it's over. But turning into my 40s for my 30s, I felt, finally I'm in my 40s. I don't know why, but you would have thought it'd be even worse. But no, for some reason, though, coming out of my 20s was just dreadful. I think because I had so many goals that I thought I would achieve by the end of my 20s, and I didn't achieve them. So it was sort of a bit of a beat down on myself. Still use my IBM M keyboard. That's good to hear, John. I've got 2 of them here. I sadly must admit I am probably going to replace them soon. they're just starting to wear out a little bit too much. The tolerances of the um, on the keyboard layout, there's the plastic deck that has all the tubes that the keys slide in and out. They're starting to wear a little bit too much, and I'm getting the keys will tilt off to the side slightly and cause a partial jam, things like that. So I may have to retire them. I'll probably get a couple of the clicky key ones, see how they are. Ecstatic Bass. I turned 42 last March. Answer to everything. Anyone knows the significance of that number in hex code? Ah, damn it. I blew the significance straight up. Sorry. Englishman in Brazil. I am 53. Okay. How did you find going into your 50s? Probably good. And I had a friend that rode Moto X and lost his literal nuts from sliding off the back. And then, oh dear God, Bobby. Oh, that is horrible. There is a bunch of chaps around here that love their motocross bikes. Yeah, they're always just racing up the road. They've got to be hitting 140 by the time they get up to the top, kilometers an hour. They're doing their monos, that maybe they're just being economical and saving wear on one tire. But I'm anticipating one day that a kangaroo or something comes out of the roadside and just bam, that's it. You'll hear the engine noise go, and then book, and I'll be like, oh jeez. Chris, why would I want to go to bed? Oh yeah, it's only 1:15. Normally I'm only just starting by now. Age is only a number, doesn't bother me. Alright. I wish. I guess the trouble is you correlate a lot of things with medical issues with age. I was fine until my mid-30s, and then, oh man, what a train wreck after that. Oh well. The asterisk designates what computer core 42 is really the answer to everything, yes. 30s were crappier for me than the 40s. Alright, with you there, Stray. Panov, 20. I see here I'm no longer the youngest, and how you feel old. Oh, Panov, enjoy your 20s while you can. I will definitely say that much. I'm not 40, but I'm walking through 20 to 50 without looking. I avoid mirrors. Better late than never. Looks like I'm on the old farm. Greg, oh. 40 was good, 50 is great. So maybe as you get a bit older and pass through the decade, your mental state becomes more one of being thankful of the fact that you made it that far. When I'm 55, it'll be great. I can draw on my private pension. Oh, gee, yeah. Money, money, money. I agree. Anything with cherry key switches will give you the IBM feel. Lynn, there's multiple different colors of cherry switches, as I know you know that. Now, I'm not sure which color is the best for the typist for emulating the IBM clicky key. There is another one though that came out, and it's not a cherry brand, it's another brand, and they have a typist blue version. But apparently it will fit in with the replaceable cherry switches as well. So I'm trying to decide whether I should contemplate, getting one of those, or whether I should just simply order one from overseas. One of the I don't know why I can never remember their name, but they basically have the same as the IBM clicky keys. Austin says, hey Paul, why the failure rate of HP and Ace machine BIOS is pretty high? Is it Windows causing it? I actually can't answer that one for you. For me, most of the time HPs fail around here due to heat because they just don't have any breathing room inside it. I mean, you look at this Toshiba, it's got so much airspace in here, and the fan has got clear access to fresh air. It's like, for a cheap laptop, I still consider this to be well designed. Whereas you pull open those HPs and everything is just so intertwined, and the tolerance is just too tight. The airflow is dreadful. So most of the ones we get are failing from thermal stress before they get any BIOS stress. The Aces, I'm not sure. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not getting very many BIOS failures here. That's the interesting thing. I brought it up on bad caps that I noticed a lot of people requesting BIOS files, and I was asking whether it was just because of people forgetting their passwords or whether it was an actual failure issue going on. So, I don't know, maybe I'm just lucky and I just don't get any BIOS fails. I've had one BIOS fail and that was from a lightning strike. What frightens me is the lack of date stamps on memory. Oh, that was only, oh god, 20 years ago. Yeah, that's really rough. I'm only 36, I decided when 40, I'll start counting backwards. Fair enough. So, it's a good reflection point. I like the MX Brown, some clickiness without being too loud. Is there something more clicky and louder than the MX Brown? Because I really don't mind the clicky or the loud because I'm half deaf. Chris Long, I'm 32, slowly turning old. Oh, Chris, come on, man. You're a spring chicken. I'm still a spring chicken. At least that's what my wife tells me. I'm lucky my wife is 9 years younger than me, so I get to drain her youth for my own purposes. HP also had issues with video chips. Yeah, the video chip issue would be compounded by the fact that HP designs them as if they're going to be living in the Antarctica. Everyone has issues with GPU. Pentium 90 heat sinks. Oh man, I miss the days when we didn't even need heat sinks in some ways. I remember the 486s came out with their heat sinks and everyone was like, whoa, what's going on here? Why do we need heat sinks? But yeah, it's just gotten more and more from there. Yeah, that's fair enough. What was I going to comment about? Oh yeah, with the comment about the date stamping on memories. I'm curious to see what happens with society over the next 20 years as we have everybody growing up or living with high definition recollection or storage of their lives right there on, say, like Facebook or videos and all that. It's going to mess with your head when you're looking back at yourself, say 30 years ago or whatever. Is it going to drive people to insanity, sitting there looking at what they have lost, so to speak, in terms of youth? And kids growing up now will know nothing but their life being in digest form on Facebook right from the start. So it's going to be curious to see how society reacts to this. I don't like HP PCs. They were never reliable, always poorly built. I'm presuming you mean laptops or PCs? I've had a fair few HP PCs, other than their custom quirks, but then Dell's just as bad for that. I haven't been too much trouble. Vampire, yes, that's me. My wife is 7 years younger than me. It's a good policy. Talking about HP laptop ventilation, grossly underrated, right? The ventilation itself. So obsessed with being quiet they forget about everything else to follow. Yeah, agreed. They've engineered themselves to a disaster. Rehot GPU. Well, that's the upside of the HPs. You know, throw a blanket over and it'll rehot itself. I realise it's not going to melt the balls. It's actually melting the junctions inside. Yeah. I hope the next 10 years battery tech grows quickly, it'll change our lives. I agree, Chris. Yes, I think if we can get a doubling of battery density in terms of weight, power to weight ratio, that should open up a tremendous amount. And we're already good enough now for vehicles, as we can see with the Tesla cars and the electric trucks and things like that coming out. But I want to see it now happen with aircraft. And I know there's a couple of electric aircraft being developed. I think it was Airbus or Boeing did theirs, and yeah, that was fine for a 30-minute flight, whatever. But if we can get to the point where we've got hour and a half flight times on aircraft with electric, that will completely revolutionize the short haul industry. So yeah, I'm really excited to see it happen, and it should do. There's a lot of promising battery technologies coming out, of which one of them should hopefully actually come out to fruition. And of course, the other thing is storage for renewable generation, like storing the power from the wind turbines and the solar or whatever. Basically, taking away the intermittent nature of renewable power source. I haven't done any Bitcoin mining. I'm sorry, I probably lose a lot of geek cred from that, but I just don't. Yeah. The big problem with memory is reconstruction, not actually the full truth. It's also very rare. Yeah, and I think that's where having a full verbatim account on places like Facebook and whatnot will be very awkward, because it's going to be there, and it's going to challenge what you believe was what did happen. So it's like I say, I can imagine there's going to be a lot of people lying on couches dealing with that. I read the other day about the flow battery where I did see that one. Yeah, I think the problem with any of these chemistry type, pardon me, I know they're all chemistry batteries, but any of these ones requiring you to fill up and replace liquids or whatever, I think they may always run into a problem with acceptance or management. But who knows? Let's see. The big issue is chemical availability, the types of chemicals used in batteries. Do you mean in terms of being able to mine them? In terms of global availability? I mean, even lithium is going to be struggling to. We're going to struggle to mine enough lithium if we really go big time with this. So the other week, some guy came up with glass electrolyte battery. I do believe I read that on Slashdot. Yeah. The problem with having increased battery tech now is because they still have lots of pull, people don't realise, but with people like Elon, it's starting to change. I think, well, you're starting to see it now, that a lot of the big oil companies and things like that are sort of subtly shifting their resources into renewables. There's a company here in Australia called AGL. They're probably international. They're now doing big promotions to say, look, we're changing over to renewables because we can see the end in the fossil fuels and whatnot. I think for a long time with the big corporations, it's been a bit of a hedging game where no one wanted to be the first one to take the dive, but no one wants to be the last one to make the shift. Because if you're the last one, you miss out on all the big profits, and if you're the first one, you miss out on all the big profits because you're the one that takes all the you take on all the initial costs, the failures and things like that. So everyone wants to be in that middle transition ground to maximize on their profits. So now that it's started happening, I suspect we're going to see it happen a lot quicker. At the end of the day, a lot of these companies just want to make money, and who can blame them? I do too. And I think they've just been playing a very good, or playing the game of who's going to make the first move, and the ball's moving now. So we should see a good deal of change in the next 15 years. That's just my opinion. I mean, I could well and truly be wrong. Mining is the availability issue. Many batteries use phosphate technology, where valence uses cobalt, but the type of chemical is the wall to advance invector. They need to find a battery technology that they can recycle the contents of it if required to. A6 will crash into hard lock state if not managed with GPU master. Well, I've obviously read the wrong thing. Oh right, I have to. Yep, that was the Bitcoining thing. They're certainly using northern test the batteries in the cold. Yeah, with the lithiums do not like cold weather. Yes, they're fine in our sort of area, that's for sure. I do wish here in Australia that the current government that is in the Conservative government, right wing, so to speak, and so they're protecting the interests of the established companies that will things like that. Basically, if you're trying to go for the progressive changes, that they're not going to play along so well. Um, I do wish they would spend the money, and they're blaming the renewables on power outages and things like that because of the inconsistent nature of renewable, which we all know is true. But instead of building up all these um, new stations, whatever, it'd be nice if they spent the money on making houses have, say, 5 or 10 kilowatt hour storage on board. Because in my theory, but then I am an armchair critic here, if we have more houses with their own storage, then you effectively eliminate the intermittency issue a great deal. And also, you eliminate the greatest cost center for a lot of these electrical distribution companies, and that is the network itself, because they have to build the network to cope with peak demand, even if that's only 1 hour a day. So they're overbuilding, over-engineering these networks to cope with that. Whereas if instead the money goes into having more localized storage, preferably in-house or maybe per block, then they eliminate the need to over-engineer their networks, and they can deal with the intermittent nature of renewable power generation a bit better. But the trouble is that falls into more of a socialist type lean, and obviously that falls off the agenda pretty quickly with the current government. Ceramic and graphene batteries seem to be very promising. Again, density comes into play. Yeah, at least certainly for things like, say, cars or anything that's mobile, you can get away with less density, obviously, for in-house or block-based storage. If someone can make a cold nuclear battery on a small scale, then at that point it wouldn't matter much, to be honest, because you have a power source that's infinitely scalable in a small package. You've got the social issue there of acceptance of nuclear, given that's a very hard one to push across to a society. I think nuclear effectively is being killed by its reputation, whether it's real or not. I don't think we're going to see a huge surge in nuclear unless we come up with cold fusion in a hurry. Okay, Stephen Remington, an AMD Ryzen fan, I see. Oh yeah, from Charleville. What are your prices for repair laptops, etc. Apple? I try to go through do the Lewis method, where you just have that no fix, no fee. I usually charge around about $279 for them, and the nice thing, most people seem to be happy with that. If it, like I did a MacBook Air the other week, that was a clock chip failure due to some random bug getting in there and spluttering its guts everywhere. So yeah, about $279 seems to work here in Australia, at least in the rural areas. I mean, if people have bought a MacBook, then they seem to be happy to spend that. And as for the PC laptops, funnily enough, I have to charge less, usually about $249, $239. But we all know that that's because the value in the perception of the owner is less for a PC laptop than what it is for a Mac owner. G'day Paul, you're back again. How you going? Mulga training. Stephen, are you training to handle mulgas, as in brown snakes? as opposed to eastern brown snakes. My dream car is expensive as the battery, pure design level. The answer isn't batteries. We need LFTR power. So around LFTR is that what is LFTR power? Yeah, I think with nuclear the problem, particularly when you've got your fission byproducts, that's the problem really. At least with the fusion byproducts, they tend to be a little generally shorter lived and a bit easier to manage. The Bobby Gordon, with the hydrogen storage, there is that new ammonia system that they're looking at, which I think would be a brilliant idea if they can make it work properly. Because I mean, it's a great way if you've got a surplus amount of energy being generated, just pump that waste. Yeah, even if it's inefficient, just pump it into generating that ammonia. I think that's the problem. Is you've got to accept that okay, these power sources are going to be intermittent, so we need to create a buffer energy storage system, and that's why I'm thinking either put it into people's houses on the corner block or turn it into some sort of liquid fuel. If they were desperate, they could even use like the Fischer-Tropper process and create new fossil fuels. Yeah, the Japanese situation's a complete disaster. And in almost all cases, it's always someone did a shortcut somewhere and it's ruined. So nuclear, in theory, is a fantastic source, but I think when we're dealing with humans on this planet, it does tend to get struck down by human issues. Oh, thorium bed, right? Yeah, pebble bed reactors. I think the problem is with the nuclear is the fact that solar and wind is coming up so quick now, and even though it doesn't have the power density, it has the better social acceptance and you can get the funding for it. It's also quicker to produce. Like you can have a 7 megawatt wind turbine up within 12 months, whereas your 100 megawatt nuclear station is going to take at least 20 years before it's ready. So yeah, it's nuclear is just sort of starting more and more fall out of favour. At least coal is too, thank God. Because that's the funny thing, coal produces quite a lot of nuclear byproducts just through the burning of the ash resulting outcome. I think it's polonium that's in it. But right, liquid fluorescent thorium reactor, right? Okay, thanks. If global climate change continues, maybe Ireland will become a tropical gateway. Yeah, it might be. And my area is going to be a complete waste zone. My area is going to be like Mad Max area, or any of those who've watched Riddick. It's going to be like crematoria here. I mean, it's bad enough as it is in summer here. You go walk outside and it really does feel like you're that poor bastard in crematoria that just walks out to go save Riddick and just turns to a crisp. Wind is a little easier, but you get the side effects, visual and low frequency noise. With the wind thing, I suppose that's in part one of the many reasons they put it to offshore. So, yeah, you don't get the people suffering from the what is it, the nocebo effect, whereby they're fine until someone says, hey, you should be feeling the effects of this low frequency vibration coming from the windmills, and then all of a sudden they feel sick. And it works. I mean, I know I've suffered that effect quite a lot with the anxiety. People go, oh, you should be suffering this, and next minute I'm struck down with the bastards. I used to always laugh. I'd hear stories about people who would die because someone pointed a finger at them or shuck them, said the right words, and the person basically just believed they were going to die, and they did, or certainly pretty close. And maybe it's just punishment from the universe, but I thought, man, how could you be so weak-minded to suffer that? And the funny thing is, it happens. It really does. If you get the person saying the right things at the right time it can be extremely hard to get those words out of your head. Why not take energy back from the yeah. Then you approach the whole. Oh my god, I can't remember. Entropy is our enemy there. Fission reactors with tons of hazardous waste. Scotch fortune in the store. Yeah, there is solar in us here, and with cheap hydropower increasing each year due to mismanagement of the monopoly, perhaps more people will use it. Thing is, with the amount of snow we get. Greg, whereabouts are you? I mean, you're in like Colorado or something? I don't know. Excuse me if I got that completely wrong. On the fence about global warming, the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and temperatures are recorded. Well, I mean, there's no denying that the global temperatures have been always swinging back and forth. I think the problem is just that our influence, we most likely are having, in my opinion, having some effect on that swing. We're sort of pushing it a little bit quicker. Personally, I don't really care so much whether we are or are not causing it. I think it's been long since something we should be doing to minimise our footprint as a general rule, regardless of whether we think it's for our own longevity or not. We've gone through the industrial phase, we've gone through the first part of the technological growth phase where we've had abundance of energy to burn up to let us make this jump. And I think now we're getting to the point where, okay, we need to cut back on our energy consumption, because if we want to be able to progress to, say, other planets, we need to find a way to be a little bit more efficient and find new ways of doing things, because, well, we can launch rockets at the moment. It's still not the most efficient way of doing things, potentially. In terms of getting objects into space, it is. So I'd say we need to do a better job of keeping our backyard clean. Hey CryJ2000, knew you'd finally turn up. Winnipeg, Canada. Oh, that's right. Sorry, you did mention that before. I do apologise for not remembering. Oh, Lynn, with the whole flat Earth thing. What scares me is this resurgence of these sort of things, the whole anti-science, anti-fact type thing. That concerns me perhaps even more than global warming. I suspect if that runs its course unabated, we probably won't be around long enough, in a way, caring enough before global warming to knock us out. It's hopefully we'll get out of this whole anti-science phase soon enough. I would like to simply say to those people who are specifically anti-science, that's fine, it can be like that, but would you care to give up all the things that science has given you? I know that's a very commonly said argument, but I tend to believe in it. It's like, well, maybe you should not have the internet, and that way you're not standing on the soapbox that science gave you. Hey, token Scottish guy. Token. Interesting way of spelling token. What I love about the whole flat earth arguments thing is they specifically pigeonhole and narrow down their context in order to validate a particular argument. And then you move to another one and they do the same thing. They like narrow everything down, find the corner case or whatever, and so. But if they collectively held their reasons, their arguments together, they'd all contradict with each other. So, but of course you'll never get them to talk about it all at once. It's always got to be just looking very narrow vision at each particular item. Those people, perpetual motion people, things like that, and mythical free energy people. Well, I'm not saying there isn't a mythical sort of alternate free energy out there. That I don't disagree with per se. I disagree with their the way they go about it. Rather than simply going, yeah, we have all these current things, we've got free power from the sun using this amazing thing called a solar cell. Uh, for them, if they're into free energy and they've got magnets, then I know that it's attracted an idiot, so I'm out of there. The world is clearly a disc. Oh, yes, here we go. The Discworld series. So, uh, thermodynamics. They're all going to be laughing when the entropy goes all crazy and we get the heat death of the universe. I'm kind of curious to see what happens after that. I'm sort of wondering, will it just sort of coalesce back together and form some whopping great big explosion? The whole theory of the universe in itself is quite amazing. The fact that we have this infinity effect where it's like, okay, fine, go to the edge of the universe and what's beyond the edge, and people say, well, it's a contained universe and there's many other universes, then what's outside of that containment of those many universes? That whole infinity thing, the limitless aspect, and even if you say, well, it's a simulation that we're in, then what's outside of this world that's simulating what we're in now? You just can't get to the end of it. It's a very cruel mind game, but I'm curious to find out what's going on. Going to build a giant ring oscillator. Was that kind of like the Iron Man one? Oh no, that was an arc reactor. I do apologise. I think the best debunk is their flight argument. Fly around South America and South Africa. I found a flight across there which debunked it. Yeah. Natural selection does not always work. Daft people still exist. Yeah. Yep. I'm a very anti-war person. I don't believe in war. I understand why it happens, and it does. But I got to say, at times I feel a little bit cold-blooded, and I kind of think there are a lot of people in this world that perhaps all they actually want is to spend their days fighting some war. So I say maybe we should create another country, and if people are really that much into, if they feel that that's all they want to do, create another country and send them off there and let them have their perpetual war. Personally, I think they'll realise once they get there just how god-awful horrible war is. But as the years go on, I kind of wonder whether people who create wars aren't doing it to deal with excesses of certain populations. I don't know. We're getting back to 42, yes. When people don't understand that where we came from, they need to follow the Bill Burr advice. 84% of people need to walk into the... I haven't seen that one before, Austin, so that's... 84% would be about right. But of course, you still need people that can and enjoy doing that certain types of work in life too. We need to form a coalition and remove the safety warnings from things worldwide. Call it population control. Yeah, the whole safety warning things is... I think there are certain definite things that you need to have warning labels on, like hydrofluoric acid is one of them. I would not like to pick up a bottle of that and get any on me. So it'd be nice to be pre-warned, but there are so many others that you sort of think, why? And the sad thing is most of those labels, warnings are there because someone actually did that. It's hard to argue facts when temperatures are followed carbon dioxide. Yeah, I mean, there's a very strong correlation there. What I'm scared about is if we get beyond a certain threshold and the system becomes self-reinforcing. I'm hoping we don't get to that. I'm hoping we don't get a great big burp from the ocean. I'm just hoping we find a way to manage it better. War balances everything. Yeah, it's brutal, but yeah, it does seem to be a very popular reset, doesn't it? Look at Orion from each hemisphere. Yeah, but token, they don't want to hear that sort of stuff. They don't believe it. And if you put them in a rocket and you sent them up into space and made them orbit the Earth, they will come back and say they put fisheye lens on the spacecraft, and also they'll come up with any reason. And the trouble is, you can never disprove them enough. You just got to walk away from it. I thought Australia started as a penal colony. Yes, yes, it did, amongst other things. Well, except for the Aboriginals. Yeah, I mean, the Aboriginals are here. They were all over the country, and yeah, the colonial powers came in and sort of did their best to enact genocide on them. It was definitely a significant mess, and it's something we'll probably be dealing with for the next easy 100 years, I'd say. Um, Hopefully we'll regain a level of balance and get back to trying to be a unified country. Undiscovered country, that's the ticket. Yeah, I think that's the one that's under the ocean that was spoken about before for the 84%. Like hot coffee, warning contents may be hot. Yeah. So, pushing me out the hill. Chris, they will fight to the very last breath that you probably put contacts on them, you drugged them, you put contacts lenses on them. Yep, that's what it'll be. Really, that's the whole thing. These people will not accept it because it will break every other thing that they base their life existence on. There's nothing you can do. Nothing you can do other than send them to another country that's under the ocean. Anyway, I'm being a bit ruthless there. I should have a little more humanity about me, and believe me, I do. I mean, that said, I probably care for animals more than I do people. I will rescue animals. I will spend a lot of money on animals. I will do all that sort of thing. Humans, I'm a little less so. I'm sorry. Other than perhaps a very select few. As a general rule, I think there's enough support structures out there for humans that animals deserve my better attention. Oh, I just realised, sorry, I shouldn't have said it so loud. I have been looking for blue tack for weeks because my webcam keeps falling over if I yank on the cord a bit too much by accident, and I wanted blue tack to stick it down, and I couldn't find it. I knew I'd bought some. I couldn't find it, and here it is. This is my blue tack, and it's feeling a bit old. I don't know what you guys call it in different countries. I don't know, but this you'll recognise it by its texture. Yeah, it's just this, whatever it is. Yeah. Animals are innocent. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I believe animals certainly have a great deal of awareness and self-awareness. I believe most of the time when people have been told that animals don't feel anything, they have no emotions and all that, it was only to justify what they were doing to the animals. It's like, oh, it's okay, we can just, skin these things alive, they don't have any feelings or whatever. Yeah, it's a load of bollocks if you ask me. It's just simply so they can sleep at night, and so that they can then get everyone else to do it for them as well. Motorman 2112, got the C922, got a K&M 23150 short mic for stand. Yeah, Motorman, the stand that comes with the Logitech, I mean, it's fine when it's fully extended, but yeah, if you're going on the short legs, then it falls over so many times. Okay, Stephen, did I answer? I answered your question. If you got any other questions, Stephen, just send me a message. You know how to get a hold of me. I love nuts. Mixed nuts wine making. What? Chris, that was random. It's ecstatic bass. Don't get me wrong, I have nothing against the Aboriginal population. They're just people with different views in life. I actually applaud the Australian people for having fun. I think that's it. It's going to be a long process. Ecstatic bass. It's not something that we can change overnight. I mean, the damage is done. It's not going to go away in a hurry. And it never works if you try to change these things overnight anyway. you could change people's lives for significant better as a society overnight, and they will probably reject it because it's just too quick. People are dug in with many views. Yeah, very few are open-minded, willing to learn, or be swayed by the views or beliefs. I think the problem is people invest so much in their views. I think Lewis has spoken about this before. I think it's something by the age of 12 or something like that. You've effectively you've stopped being sufficiently flexible and you've hardened up to what you're going to be. Um, so yeah, if you counter their views or you ask them to change, you're effectively asking them to no longer be who they believe they are. So yeah, it's very hard to get people to change. Humans are the most destructive animal on this planet. I wish I wasn't human. Termites come pretty damn close, I gotta say. In Canada, it's Lepage Funtac. Is that because the French influence, I'm guessing, for Lepage? Does that mean like paper fun stick stuff, maybe? Cashews also. Cashews are good. So, what? You're kidding me, man. I thought, oh, okay. Well, there you go. There you go. I actually taught something. I didn't teach something. Someone discovered something. That's the other thing I hate in a lot of people these days is, and I see this in the comments and things like that occasionally. If someone wants to illuminate to you something new, it wouldn't be so bad. I think there'd be more acceptance, perhaps, if people didn't seem to attach or write it in such a way that it feels like that they are draining you of your whatever you are. Um, it's like their insight has a very high cost to it, or a cost to it, or it opens up a door, or something like that that they can then backdoor you with. I think there's a lot of I rebel very strongly against that sort of style of trying to put across a point. I think if you're going to put across a point to somebody, you need to do it a way where they can accept that point and take it on without them feeling like it's cost them either anything of their pride or their time or anything like that. And if you can find a way to do that, then you'll probably win over a lot more people. But if you start trying to lace these helpful things or whatever with something that takes away from them, then yeah, I mean, people are going to reject that. Oi, Paul, when you say my nickname, keep in mind it's reference to music, not fishing. Right, yes. Okay, thank you. Fishing. Just kidding you. Big old bass player. Yep, I can't play musical instruments for crap. Really can't, really can't. I know a lot of technologically orientated people seem to be quite skilled with musical instruments, and I'm definitely not one of those. And it's not just because of my hearing. I know it's not that. LePage is a giant glue company. Oh, okay. Alright, fair enough then. Most people are naturally resistant to change. Yeah, unless you can bait them with a good reward on the other end. So, alright. I've reached 2 o'clock. I can now go to bed. No, it's just I've got some business work to do and prep for tomorrow, some paperwork, tax, things like that. Since I am a sole trader working for myself, I have to do all those sort of things. And to be fair, I'm not actually looking to expand beyond this. If I'm going to expand on something in terms of business ventures, it would be perhaps licensing something I design, or yeah, it would basically be something I design. But in terms of doing this sort of work here, I don't think I'll ever choose to willingly expand to multiple people unless they were subcontracted. Um, People do say it's more cost efficient to become a company here in Australia, but there are so many regulations above and beyond with regards to that you sort of, there's this valley of it's a wasteland between going from being a sole trader to being a company, and I think getting across that valley is very hard. So I'll put my energies into inventing things or whatever instead. Chris, why would I want to read your nuts? So to recap, cashews, pecans, almonds, walnuts, pistachios are the only acceptable nuts in a mixed nuts. Right. Hazelnuts are only good with chocolate. Brazil nuts, no one eats those. Actually I do, but yeah, they taste funny. Peanuts are only acceptable in a paste form. Yeah, I'm never been keen on peanuts, and yeah. CryJ2000, they do it in a condescending or superior manner as if they're bestowing knowledge to the rocks. Yeah, I mean, that's it. Yeah, it's that whole condescending, patronizing, talking down to you as if you don't know anything or you've got no... You know, we all have blind spots, blank spots, all that sort of thing. I mean, God, every time I want to stream here, I'm being lectured by people, and I pick up new things. And it's hard to accept that you don't know certain things, but I think the more you know, the less you realise you know. I should rather say the more you know, the less you realise you know nothing. And yeah. So yeah, if you're going to help someone, make sure you're actually helping them and not trying to take a piece of them. Alright, okay, I'm going to go to bed. Favourite nut is macadamium. Fortunately, Australia grows macadamiums by the heap, and we used to have a macadamium tree here too. Very nice. Alright, I'm out. Okay, what's the Vegemite? Nah, Vegemite's nasty. Keep it, I love it, but you got to keep it really thin on buttered, cheap, nasty white bread. I also like Marmite. That's nice too, for the UK Marmite, the proper one. But yeah, keep it thin. It's a nice savoury spread. Treat it like it's salt. And if anyone ever tells you to spread it thick like peanut butter, do this to them and tell them to go jump, because all they're doing is lying to you for this sick pleasure of making you gag and die. Yeah. Alright, that's it. I'm done. I'm closing up. Thank you very much everyone for being here. It was a short build, but it was a good long chat. I appreciate all the different topics. I might see you tomorrow night. And I am working on the DD Rescue edited series. So I'll catch us all later.